Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm your host, as always, Clint McClain. Welcome back to the show, Die Hards. I hope everybody out there is doing well. I hope everybody is staying down and staying safe, staying indoors. We are back on track this week for the Die Hard MMA podcast, and believe it or not, there's actually a lot to talk about. I know there's a whole lot of craziness going on in the world right now, and the world of MMA is kind of on hold. The world of sports in general is kind of on hold, but we actually have topics, which is pleasantly surprising. I did not expect that we were going to have anything like that going on, so I'm looking forward to being able to chat it up with you diehards, and I'm happy to bring something to the airways, a new episode, some entertainment for you, because I know a lot of people are probably cooped up with not a whole lot to do right now, so let's get freaking into this thing. The first thing I want to do, as always, is shout out our friends and fans. We've got the boys over at GOAT Capital Sports. This episode is brought to you by GOAT Capital Sports, GOAT Capital _. Give them a follow over on Twitter. Once sports get rolling again, they are the boys. They have got you covered. They will take care of you on all the other sports out there that I don't cover here on this show. So again, hit them up. Give them a follow. They're a great resource to have, especially once the world starts turning again. We do have a couple of new followers. We have subscribers on YouTube. Chris Bostings, Mark Selzer, Brats and Bullies, it looks like. Brats and Bullies? Brats and Bullies. Not sure. My bad. Maurice David. And you know what? We haven't had a whole lot of new subscribers. That is okay. Given the state of the world, I understand why we don't have a whole lot of MMA content that we're pumping out, so it's hard to attract new folks. So those of you who are new to the show, thank you very much for subscribing. Welcome to the Die Hard family, the Die Hard Horde, as we like to refer to ourselves. So I jotted down a couple of topics here, just some stuff to kind of go over and chat about while we do the show this week. This is going to be kind of a chill, relax, and chat type of situation, honestly. I'm probably going to hit record on the mic, and I'm probably just going to let it go. There's going to be little to no editing on this thing. So if I sound like a moron, if I say something stupid and try to take it back, please don't roast me too badly for it, because I have a tendency to put my foot in my mouth when I do stuff like this. So I do want to briefly go over the Cage Warriors card. That was a couple of weeks ago. Thank you all for understanding why there was no show last week. I had a bit of a personal situation. Luckily, it was nothing COVID-19 or coronavirus related. But we had a family member that was sick that we had to deal with some stuff, so I wasn't able to do the show last week and do a recap. So I just want to do a brief recap of that. We went 1-1. We broke even. We laid the wood on the bear. He scared us a little bit in the third round, almost got knocked out. That kid, I hope he gets to the UFC, because he's going to be a straight fade. He's going to be so easy against the right opponent to take advantage of. But he had the right opponent this time to go ahead and be a bet on type of situation. So I was really happy to cash that. Easy money. And then what we did is we went ahead and played the under in the main event. We were hoping that the dentist was going to land that big knockout shot. And looking back on it, I mean, I should have seen the writing on the wall. I knew I didn't want to lay that kind of price on Darren the Dentist Stewart, but what I didn't expect to see is his opponent having such a rejuvenation up a weight class. I thought that this was going to be kind of a desperation move. He was going to be a little undersized. You know, maybe he just wasn't going to have the power and the strength to handle a guy like the Dentist, who we've seen have his grappling game just kind of go, his counter grappling game just improve lately with his last couple opponents being solid wrestlers. That's all that he's been thrown to lately. So I thought he was going to be able to defend the takedown and then get in there and mix it up. And every single time he had an opportunity to swing some shots, he didn't do shit. I mean, it was sad. Like the one time he had a clear swinging shot for the chin, he threw a leg kick. I mean, like, I don't know what was going on with him. I mean, now we do have to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt, because these guys were thrown around all over the place. I mean, they're in London. They're supposed to be fighting for the UFC. The whole coronavirus thing starts happening up. The thing gets shut down. You can't travel in and out of the country. Your opponent gets changed at the last second. You didn't train for this guy. I mean, it was a completely different stylistic matchup. I'm not sure how much wrestling Darren did in the lead up to this fight, considering he was supposed to face Marvin Vettori. So, I mean, Yeah, I don't want to shit on the guy too badly because of everything that was going on. I can understand why he would be in a bit of a mental loop or a kind of a mental hurdle situation where he had a hard time getting up for that fight. So let's not shit on him too bad. I still like him as a fighter, but definitely if you were on the other side of that one, cashing anywhere from like plus 170 to plus 200 on the underdog, congratulations. That was the absolute right side. We free rolled. We cashed a unit on our, lay in the wood on our big favorite, and then we laid that unit on the under 1.5, looking for that nice juicy plus price. That would have been a real fun night for us to cash both of those, but it is what it is. We got a good fun night of fights out of it. There were some pretty entertaining fights actually on that card, so I had a good time with it, and I'm totally okay breaking even. We had, the last card that we're gonna see for weeks, and the fact that we didn't post an L on that one, I mean, I'll take it. So I do want to go ahead and start this thing off, just the kind of chat portion of the podcast, with a list of UFC fighters that apparently have been laid off, fighters that are no longer with the UFC. We've got Mairbek Taisimov, Tanya Evinger, Dong Young Ma, which is nice because then we won't confuse him with Dong Young Kim anymore. We've got Chance Rincounter, which I'm a little surprised at, Matthew Lopez, Cyril Asker, Khalid Murtazaliev, Talita Bernardo, Jody Escabel, Kyle Prepelek, Marcos Mariano, Isabella De Porta, and Zhenhong Liu. I don't even know who Zhenhong Liu is. There's a couple names on there. Mairbek Taisimov, Chance Rincounter. Those ones I'm a little surprised at, but if you're if you're taking a look at some fights coming up and things like that, those are the fighters that we're going to be missing moving forward. So just a heads up. And this isn't a news show, but it's going to be a little bit of that because of everything that's going on. Let's start with the big one, shall we? Jon Jones. No, that's not the big one. Tony Ferguson and Khabib. Holy crap. I cannot believe how badly this fight is cursed. I mean, I know everyone's talking about it's not cursed. Don't believe in curses, man. Curses are stupid. It's not cursed. I mean, you're right. It's not. I'm not superstitious. I'm a little stitious. But this fight is so cursed, it's not even funny. It took an act of God to stop this fight. Dana White was not going to let anything happen to this fight, and it took worldwide devastation to keep Tony and Khabib from happening. So where do we go now? Dana White has sworn on his life, essentially, that UFC 249 is still going to happen, which that is music to my ears. It's 3 weeks away. This weekend will be the 4th, then we've got the 11th, then the 18th, so I guess it's only about 2.5 weeks away. Dear God, I need it. I mean, I can't tell you guys. It's hard to prep for this podcast because as much as I like to I like to think of myself as an entertainer. I like to think I'm a pretty funny guy. I come up with a little funny quip here and there every once in a while. I'm not that funny. I can't fill multiple weeks of shows with nothing but funny content about nothing going on. I'm not a stand-up comedian. I wish I could be. I'm relatively entertaining, but I'm just not that good. We need the fights back. And not only that, we need something to watch. Holy crap. I mean, without any sports whatsoever on right now, it's driving me a little batty. I mean, I'm sitting here wearing my Arizona Coyotes jersey and just sulking about the fact that hockey was cut short and we're not going to get to see the end of that season. I'll bet you they canceled the whole thing. And then, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of baseball or basketball, but it's something to bet on, right? I mean, the degenerate in me wants those things back, if nothing else, just for the action to keep things going from week to week. And it's been a little frustrating not to have that. So we need the UFC back. And I know there's a whole lot of health concerns, and I know the world out there is really scary right now. But I mean, it's one of those things where if I was in Dana White's shoes, I would cancel. I'll be honest with you. I'm scared for people's safety. I'm scared for the spreading of this thing. I want to make sure we flatten that curve as much as humanly possible so fewer and fewer people are infected. But if Dana White is going to put on a show, I'm here for it. I'm not going to be one of those people claiming that I'm going to boycott it or, tune it out, not tune in, that kind of. I will damn sure be on my couch. I will damn sure have my bets locked and loaded. I will be ready to go. So even without Tony and Khabib, I'm very much still looking forward to UFC 249. I want to take a look at the roster right now. I had a question asked from one of our diehard family members earlier today, whether or not we know of any fights that are absolutely locked up. Shout out to Cold Hard Units for the question there. I don't know if any of these are a lock. I don't know if any of these are a guarantee. But right now, what we have listed for UFC 249 is Jessica Andrade versus Rose Namajunas. And now what I've seen is that Andrade is attempting to get out of Brazil, I think, so that she can be here for that fight. But it's looking like that one may be scratched. So probably not that one. Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Hernandez, one that I was really looking forward to. I was really looking to dig in and tape study on that one. I was very interested in Alex Hernandez for that fight. And that one's not going to happen because Islam Makhachev has the same problem that Khabib does. I think he's landlocked over in Russia. So that one's probably not going to happen either. Now, I did see something on Instagram today. Someone did an interview with Alex Hernandez, and he threw out the idea of potentially having a rematch with Donald Cowboy Cerrone. And I love that idea. I absolutely love that idea because I think the first fight with Donald Cerrone and then the fight with Francisco Trinaldo and all the time in between has probably done leaps and bounds of good for a kid that's as talented as Alex Hernandez is. I expect him to come back looking like an absolute monster. And no offense, as much as I don't really want to see Cowboy get thrown to the wolves again, as much as I don't want to see Cowboy get flatlined again, he is very, very suspect at this point. All the damage that he's taken in just his last 4 or 5 fights, it's a problem. A kid like Alexander Hernandez, I mean, I thought he was going to knock him out the first time. He got a little overzealous. He learned his lesson. I think he would come back from that and take his time a little bit more, and I think he would be the one doing the finishing if they rematched. And I would hopefully be getting an underdog line on that because of the way the fight went the first time. So I would definitely be interested in that kind of a matchup. I haven't heard anything about Calvin Kattar and Jeremy Stephens, so I think that fight is still on. I saw that, I think on Instagram, Calvin Kattar said that he's taking the Tony Ferguson style of training method. He's just going to be ready whenever, wherever, whoever, and try and, be able to accept a fight and be there for it. So I'm hoping that we still have that fight intact, although I'm not sure that's going to happen. Uriah Hall versus Jacare Souza. I haven't heard anything about that one, so I think we still have that one. Same thing with Lyman Good, Bilal Muhammad. No news is good news. And then the rest of the card, Otman Zaitar and Karma Worthy, Gian Vellante and Big Ben Rothwell, Sijara Eubanks, Sarah Moras, Carl Robertson, Maramed Muradov. The Muradov fight, I'm not sure, he might be in Russia as well. So there are a couple of fights that I think we are still going to get on this one. And I just can't believe, really the big problem though is the main event. So the nice thing is there's been an absolute outpouring of options for a fill-in for Khabib. We've got Dustin the Diamond Poirier who threw his name in the hat. They're talking about Usman and Masvidal maybe stepping up on short notice to fill that one. They're again talking about Colby Covington versus Tyrone Woodley. That's my pick. I really hope that they just go ahead and slide that one in there. If they don't actually give Tony a fight, if they hold them off and try and keep Tony Khabib intact and just push it back a little bit, I would wish they would kind of swap the main event out. Either of those options would be good. I would watch either Usman Masvidal or Covington, Woodley. Hell, throw them both on there. Those are phenomenal fights if all of them are ready to go. Those are fights that we've been looking forward to and wanting to see for a long, long time. So I would take either of them. As far as fill-ins for Tony, Coach Kavanaugh, Conor McGregor's coach, did this stupid freaking cryptic tweet of maybe there's a third option, and that just gives everybody false hope that Conor McGregor is going to step in on short notice to take on Khabib. It ain't happening, folks. I'm sorry. I hate to be that guy, but it's just not happening. When Conor McGregor was full of piss and vinegar and he was a young fighter and the world was his oyster and he was really out there trying to make a name for himself, that Conor would have stepped up on short notice to take that fight. Absolutely. Absolutely he would have. And the Conor McGregor now will say, he'll absolutely say that he will step up on short notice and take that fight. But is he actually going to do it? I don't think so. Because of the amount of money, time, and effort the UFC is expending to put this fight together, the paycheck that Conor McGregor would be demanding for this kind of a fight, it wouldn't make financial sense, especially because the UFC wants to get the marketing machine behind a guy like Conor. His fights do gangbusters. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. If Conor were to step up and fight, it would be awesome. It'd be amazing. Like the casuals, everybody that doesn't tune into MMA, they would all be tuning in. This would be a huge, unexpected event that would just take over everything if Conor decided, you know what, let's go ahead and make this fight happen. But the UFC wants to properly promote it. Now, they do have a couple of weeks, so they could get some trailers out there and stuff like that. It could happen, but I just don't think that they want to do it in this kind of a situation. I really don't. I don't know. Let me know if you disagree. I'm kind of struggling here because I would totally watch that fight. Now, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, those are the two guys who have kind of been talked about, and Dustin Poirier. So I'll throw him in there. Let's just do a little bit of a round table kind of, why don't we? So Tony Ferguson is going to be taking on one of these guys, theoretically. Let's go ahead and do an imaginary world where that's the case, okay? How do we look at this fight? I think that the most likely option is Justin Gaethje. Now, Justin Gaethje has previously come out and stated that he's not going to take a fight with Tony Ferguson on short notice. That's not really his style. He wants a full training camp. He wants to be prepared. Can't really knock him for that. But I feel like given the circumstances and given how hard to get Conor has been, and Gaethje believes himself to be the next guy, I feel like this is maybe your shot. This isn't super short notice. It's short notice, but it's not like ultra short notice. You've got a couple of weeks, and realistically, these are the top guys at the division. If you're gonna be the champion, if you're gonna be the man, you've got to beat all of these names that we're talking about right now anyway, right? I kind of got into it with MMA Predictions Guru on Twitter about this one. He was saying that Gaethje versus Ferguson holds no value to the division. And I kind of disagree. I feel like that's actually the fight that makes the most sense. So the UFC long-term wants to do Conor Khabib 2. That's the biggest paycheck that they can ever possibly ask for, right? So because they want Conor Khabib 2, they have to find a way for that fight to happen. The idea was Gaethje versus Conor for a true number one contender fight, a slugfest between two power punchers, and just see who falls down first. We've seen Gaethje be beaten by guys exactly like that before, considering how Conor has kind of doubled back down on his efforts and his training. If he's newly, freshly motivated, he's got a damn good shot to win that thing the same exact way that Alvarez and Poirier did, right? So that's the path to that fight. Khabib beats Tony, Conor beats Gaethje. Now, if we do this fight here, short notice fill-in, Gaethje comes and fights Tony, that clears the line. There is now no more line for Conor McGregor, right? So the winner of Tony versus Gaethje theoretically should have the next shot at Khabib, right? But we know how the UFC works. If one of those guys is injured and they want to do the fight on International Fight Week, well, I feel like that's the one that really kind of puts a wrench into this thing and makes it really interesting, because they're going to find whatever way it takes to make Conor versus Khabib 2 happen. Now, Dustin Poirier, I didn't finish my thought there. I think the fight makes sense because Justin Gaethje is kind of that dark horse right now in the division, right? So Dustin Poirier already had his shot. He lost the championship fight to Khabib. He's a little out of the picture right now. He needs to get a couple wins together before we can talk about him in the picture again. Conor, same kind of thing. I think he needs one more win. I would love him to fight a guy like Poirier or Gaethje to really earn that number one contender spot to get back to the title shot. Tony's the only clear number one guy, and damn sure is he the clear number one guy. There's no disputing Tony's claim to the throne right now. So that fight has to happen. But if we take Khabib out of the equation and Tony is wanting to fight, he doesn't want to postpone, or the UFC tries to push this fight forward and he needs an opponent, Gaethje's the one that makes the most sense to me, okay? Conor would be awesome, but again, we talked about the marketing machine, and that would be a phenomenal fight, one that I never really thought that we had seen, but I just don't see it happening. Gaethje potentially could happen, and if that fight takes place, it really clears the line to Khabib. So if Gaethje wins against Tony, he has a very, very strong, extremely strong and valid argument for having the next title shot. He already does. Taking out Tony, who is the guy right now, makes him the clear number one contender. If there's any issues as far as like Ramadan for Khabib, travel situations, anything like that, well, then you've got Justin Gaethje versus Conor McGregor for the title. That fight is high stakes, slugfest, two super powerful guys. It makes a ton of sense, would be really fun until Khabib could return, right? Otherwise, you've got Gaethje, who's the guy who's always said his counter wrestling ability is the reason he will be the man to beat Khabib. Now he's beaten the number one guy, and he gets his face off with Khabib, and Conor takes on the winner unopposed, right? I mean, it either eliminates one of those roadblocks for the division moving forward, because if Tony beats Gaethje is suddenly not in the conversation anymore. No one wants to hear about Gaethje after he's lost to Tony Ferguson. So it clears the way for Conor to have dibs on the next winner, and then it also solidifies Tony and Khabib happening again. Because we all know how MMA works. If this fight doesn't happen on the 18th, who knows when it's going to happen, or if it'll ever happen. Because Tony could trip on another wire. They could strip somebody and make an interim title. Because of the way things are working in the world right now with flights and blah, blah, you know what I mean? Like, we never know if that fight will ever resurface. If Tony beats Gaethje, he squashes that. He absolutely squashes any talk of anybody else having a claim to that title shot, because he is still the number one guy, and he was massively the number one guy at that point. Gaethje is a problem. He's an absolute problem for anybody. And if Tony goes out there and stomps him, the only other person you could give that title shot to would be Conor McGregor. And because of Khabib's travel situation, he's the problem. He's the one that's landlocked away. That's not happening. Conor's got to go through Tony to get there. So I think that fight actually does make a little bit of sense if they're going to make it. What makes the most sense to me, postpone it. Keep all the fights intact. Still do Conor versus Gaethje if you can get it done. Still do Tony versus Khabib. Make that happen just in a couple of months or something. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of glad I'm not Dana White right now. You know what? Let me rephrase that. I am really freaking glad that I'm not Dana White right now, because I don't want to deal with these kinds of problems. This is not really a fun situation. I can't imagine having the fighters clamoring at me for money in the middle of this. So that's kind of my take on the whole UFC 249 main event thing. Dustin Poirier is kind of the man out cold right now. That fight makes the least sense to me. He just came off his title shot loss. He needs to get a win. I get that, but he's not really in the picture. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to fight Tony. I favor Tony in that matchup anyway. And it just doesn't, I don't know, that one doesn't feel sexy to me either. 249 is supposed to be like the biggest card we could possibly ask for right now. And Dustin, as big of a fan as I am of Dustin Poirier, I just don't think him filling in on short notice gets everybody excited. When you've got Conor and Gaethje and Khabib as the other options, especially since Dustin is coming off of losing the title shot, I mean, he's the only one of those options with no momentum. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of the guy. I would watch that fight. I would absolutely watch that fight. But it's my least favorite option of the three. Now, let's get on to the other big news issue that's kind of floating around there. Jon freaking Jones. What are we going to do with this guy? I mean, I just don't know what to do about Jon Jones. He's such an issue. I mean, I wish there was something that we could do to help him. I don't want to sit here and shit on him. He's an incredible fighter. He's done so much for the UFC and so much for the sport. I can't believe that he is doing this again. And, you know, you must have heard pretty much everybody else talk about this at this point already. His issues are deep, and I don't have an answer. You know, it's going to be the same situation as always. He's going to get a slap on the wrist. He's going to get off clean and easy. And the UFC is not going to do anything about it because he's one of their biggest cash cows. And he's going to come back and fight. That's what's going to happen. And I think Jon Jones is going to be one of those very, very sad stories in a couple of years. I think he's going to be... I don't want to wish this on him, but if something tragic happens with Jon Jones in a couple of years, I really think that's the direction he's headed. He's got a problem, and he seems to have enablers surrounding him, and he doesn't seem to take it seriously. I mean, the promise that he's given of, I'll get it straight, he's made that promise several times already in the past, and he has yet to do anything differently. So I'm worried about him. I'm scared for him. I wish there was something that we as the fans could do to turn him around. Unfortunately, there isn't. I don't want to sit too long on this subject because it's upsetting and depressing. And I really don't want to speak poorly about one of the most amazing fighters that we have ever seen. I've talked a whole lot of shit about Jon Jones in my life, but the addiction issue is not something... It's not something to attack him for. It's not something to go for the throat for when he's at his lowest point, when he broke again. That's not when you attack somebody. And I just want to give a shout out to Daniel Cormier. I know he's not listening to this podcast and never will listen to this podcast, but he went on Ariel Helwani's show and made one of the most amazing statements. I mean, he was talking about Jon Jones, and Jon took every opportunity to personally attack Daniel Cormier in the lead up to all of their fights. The crazy rivalry that they had, Jon took every opportunity to dig at Daniel personally. And this is why Daniel Cormier is and will always be a far greater champion than Jon Jones will ever be. DC just wanted to help him. DC didn't take this opportunity to gloat about the fact that he was in trouble again. DC wanted to find a way to take care of him and wish him well and offer advice. I mean, DC is just the man. He is absolutely all class. And that is something that I feel like gets under-repped in MMA. We're talking about being fans of a sport where people beat the crap out of each other for our entertainment. There's blood and glory, and these guys are fighters until the very end. And you don't see enough humans. You don't see enough people who are genuine people, and DC is one of them. So I massively respect DC, and I love that he took that angle and that opportunity, because that was class. That was all class. Speaking of all class, I do, again, want to shine a nice positive light on something that's happening in our community. Conor McGregor actually went out and bought 1 million euros worth of hospital supplies. Now, if you don't know, the euro, I believe, is stronger than the dollar. So he purchased over $1 million worth of hospital supplies to help with the corona situation. And that's just incredible. That's the kind of thing that I've had my questions and my issues with Conor. Again, very Jon Jonesy, where he's had some problems in the past, personal issues outside the cage, the whole trolley cart thing. He's done a whole lot of bad things, and I as much as I love watching Conor fight, I don't really like him as a person. He really feels like he's doing some serious good out there. He might be looking at Jon Jones as a cautionary tale and taking it a different way, because the changes he's made in his lead up to his last fight, the stuff he's still continuing to say and do, especially during this world crisis, it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. And I'm floored by the fact that he was willing to go and make that move. I wish we saw that more. I really do. I know that mixed martial arts fighters aren't the cream of the crop when it comes to celebrity or money. Our sport's not quite there yet. There are some serious millionaires from the UFC, guys like, GSP Anderson Silva, that made life-changing money working for this company, but not a lot of them, because there's still a lot of fighters that are really severely underpaid, unfortunately. And seeing someone who is a megastar like Conor McGregor do what he did, I wish we saw more of that from athletes and celebrities that sleep on piles of gold pitching in to help out. So big move there by Conor, big respect. Absolutely love to hear something like that. Did a lot of good for everybody. So that's really kind of the end of where I have as far as news headlines and big things going on. Again, like I said, I'm unfortunately not a talk show host. I think I could be a pretty good one if I worked on it, but it's not something that I've put a whole ton of practice into, as you can tell. So unless I've got comments or questions to answer, things like that, I don't have a whole lot planned to go on about. One thing as far as betting and looking to the future goes, I did tweet this out earlier. Ian Heinisch moved over to Tiger Muay Thai. That is something that I will be very interested in. You all know how I feel about Ian Heinisch. He really came out of the gates for us. We went 2-2 for his first two fights, and then we went 0-2 on his second two fights. I expected him to win one of those last two, and he just looked like he had topped out. But he's finally decided he's one of the, you don't see this anymore with fighters. A lot of these guys are stagnating because they're staying with their home gym and they're not getting those fresh looks. They're not changing coaches, and then they just stagnate. They don't develop. Their skills don't change, and they've capped out. That's really what I thought what happened with Ian Heinisch, and I said it on the podcast. I said, until something massive happens to change my opinion, I am done with the Hurricane, because this dude's got the physical ability, he's got all the skills in the world, and for some reason, he's not changed his game whatsoever. He's not evolving, he's not looking any better. There's a certain type of fighter that he can fight, and nothing beyond that, because he's going to have a problem with anybody else that can adjust. Well, now that he has moved out to Tiger Muay Thai, that is one of the best places in the world for him to go. I love Tiger Muay Thai. They've got an absolute treasure trove of fighters that he can learn from, mix his skills up with. If anybody is going to get changed moving to Tiger Muay Thai, a guy like Ian is going to be the guy. And that's something that's very exciting for me from a betting perspective for his next fight. I want to see what he brings to the table. Obviously, his opponent and the line are going to be a big deciding factor on whether or not we trust him and take a shot with him. But just hearing the simple fact that he's moving to a place like Tiger, that helps me out a whole lot. The only other thing is I wanted to kind of touch base on Kevin Lee one more time. I know I've talked a lot about Kevin Lee. I'm a huge fan of Kevin Lee, and he really let us down in his last fight against Charles Oliveira. I know a lot of people were on Oliveira, but I kind of talked about how I thought Kevin Lee kind of beat himself, and I heard an interview with him. I think he did with Ariel Helwani on the Instagram story a couple of days ago. And it really kind of confirmed absolutely everything that I thought. And I know it sounds like it's getting old at this point. I stand by the fact that I think that Kevin Lee is championship material. I think that Kevin Lee is absolutely capable of winning UFC gold. He is still so young, and I think he's in the right place. I know that TriStar didn't have a good night at that last fight card, UFC Brazil, both Johnny Walker and Kevin Lee going down the way that they did. But that's an incredible gym. They've got all the experience and knowledge there. The coach for Asahabi is absolutely phenomenal. That's a good place for these young fighters to be. Just because they didn't come out of the gates in their first fight blazing doesn't mean that they're not reworking their game. Doesn't mean that they're not improving. Doesn't mean that they're dead in the water and they're not going to go anywhere. They can both still very much improve and head the right direction at a gym like that. So I'm not off the Kevin Lee hype train just yet. I would like to give him more time there. He fully admitted that his weight cut went bad and it was his fault. And that's something I talked about on the podcast. I actually thought that him coming in overweight wasn't a bad sign for us, because I thought he was going to, have more gas in the tank, stuff like that. I thought everything was really worked out. The last fight that he had before Charles Oliveira, he had everything on point, sharp, and ready to go. Turns out he went out to Brazil all by himself, didn't take a nutritionist with him, and even with as many fights as a guy like Kevin Lee has on his professional record, he doesn't really know how to manage cutting his own weight, which that's scary. It's surprising, but Kevin Lee is one of those guys that he's a well-oiled machine, but he needs that captain of the ship, and that's kind of what we talked about when his coach and father figure passed away a couple of years ago. He lost everything. He was a completely lost man. He didn't know what to do. And that hole is being filled slowly, but it's not there yet. And that's what I'm talking about. He went out there very unprepared, and that's the kind of thing that I unfortunately don't have access to. If I had known he went out there without a nutritionist, that would have been a big red flag to begin with. And then when he missed weight, if he didn't have a nutritionist with him, that would have been a bigger red flag. Those are the kinds of things in betting that if we had access to that information, that fight would have been a whole lot easier for us to stay away from or go the other way on. But the way it panned out, unfortunately, we got caught. So, I mean, just for you all to know, I think that Kevin Lee is still going to have a lot of gas left in the tank moving forward. It's just going to take him some time. So don't freak out the next time he has a fight and you see me betting on him, because I more than likely will. I think he's in a good place. I just think he needs to get by those mental hurdles. It's funny to me how some fighters just seem to have it. There are some of those guys out there that don't seem like they need any help, that seem to just know everything from the get-go, right out the gates, and they never have a problem. And then there's those other guys that have those mental hurdles. Like Jon Jones is a perfect example. In the fight game, in the cage, you shut that cage door, and he's an artist. I mean, the things he does are just amazing and beautiful and so spectacular. And then as soon as he walks out of the cage, he is a mess. He's an absolute mess. And then you've got those guys who are in the cage and cannot perform up to the level that they do in training, because that's their problem. That's their hurdle. Once the bright lights are on them, that's when they can't perform. They don't have it in them to get it done. And then you've got guys like Kevin Lee that they've got column A and column B. They're not insane outside the cage. They're fine under the bright lights, but they've got that mental disconnect that, they're the Albert Einstein. He can't get himself dressed in the morning, but he can fight. If he has someone to dress him, he's good to go. You know what I mean? And that's where I think Kevin Lee is. The different types of fighters and their different issues are kind of hilarious to me. I cannot imagine, the amount of stress they put themselves under, the amount of work that they go through getting to where they are, developing all those skills, and then being able to perform perfectly on any given night. We can't give enough respect to the fighters for what they do. I trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm only a blue belt, so I never made it that far, unfortunately. I had no problem competing. Competing was fun. I really felt like I shined in competition, but you know what? I couldn't do shit as far as training goes if I wasn't with my coach. Like, if I didn't have my jiu-jitsu class at 6 p.m. that I went to on a daily basis, like, you couldn't count on me to eat right. You couldn't count on me to do cardio on my own on Saturday and Sunday. If I got my training in the gym, that was the only time I was training. Obviously, I'm not a professional fighter or anything like that, but it's, those are the types of things that it's just, it's interesting to me. It's really interesting to me. So I know that's kind of a weird edge to, hang this thing on. Again, I told you all from the beginning, this is going to be a bit of a weird show, because I did not have a plan coming into this podcast, and I just wanted to talk to you about a couple of key news items and give you a little bit of something to enjoy, a little bit of something to listen to. If it was fun for you, please give me a like down in the comments below. I'm going to try and do a show for you next week. Give me some topics. Talk to me about some stuff that you want to hear me on the show go over. If you've got questions, if there's a division maybe you'd like to see me break down, if there's upcoming fights that you want me to preview. Right now, I'm kind of putting everything on hold. I am not tape studying or anything like that, because we don't know who's fighting who. I'm enjoying the mental break. I still have a full-time job. I still got my daughter and my wife to take care of. So I'm just kind of being a at-home dad right now while all this stuff is going on. So forgive me, but I'm looking forward to getting back on the tape study train. Once we have some fights locked and loaded, so many things are moving right now. So many things are falling apart right now. I don't want to sink hours and hours and hours into tape studying, looking at the lines, and I've got my picks. I'm locked and loaded. I'm ready. Oh, the fight's canceled. That's exactly why I was waiting on Tony and Khabib, because I didn't want it to fall apart at the very last second and be all ready to go and then have to start over because we got a new opponent. I'm just waiting. I'm just going to sit tight. So be forewarned, if you're asking about potential fights and potential matchups, you're going to get my on the spot answer. You're not going to get my refined, developed, dug into, knowledgeable type of information like you normally would. I will give you a rapid fire answer. I'll tell you who I think, but it's only going to be going off the top of the brain. This is the time I want everybody to bear in mind we can use all the positivity that we can handle right now. That's something we always talk about on the show when it comes to sports betting. You got to have that positive attitude. You got to keep your head up, and definitely in these kinds of times, we absolutely have to keep our heads up. We absolutely have to have a positive attitude and be there for each other. I don't know if you believe in prayer. I don't know if you believe in good vibes. I personally do. I'm a Christian. I do pray, and I'm praying every single freaking day about this thing going on right now. So if you do, now's the time to do it. I hope all of you out there are safe. I hope your families are safe. I hope your jobs are safe. I hope you're all doing okay. Much love, nothing but respect. If you've got nothing to do and you need to get your gamble fix on, give a look to my boy Jimmy the Bag. He does a live stream show. I think he's going Wednesday through Sunday right now. And if you've got a book that allows you to bet on horse racing, that's what they're doing. He's up in Canada and he's watching all the ponies, and he caps for like 8 hours straight live on camera. And they break down the horse races rapid fire before all of them go off. And if you're an action junkie and you need something to bet on, that's your option right now. And you know what? If you don't have the way to bet on those horses and you just need something to watch, the show is damn entertaining. Jimmy's really funny. Everybody in the chat are super hilarious. I'll be in there. I'll be in the YouTube chat section of it. I like to tune into that show. I love you guys. Once again, I know I say this a lot, but I really appreciate you all. Without you, the fans, there really would be no Die Hard MMA podcast show. And now more than ever with the state of the world, I'm just extremely grateful that I've got a fan following like I do with you all. So thank you all from the bottom of my heart. You guys mean the world to me. Hit the like button, share, subscribe. Everybody stay safe, and I'll talk to you next week.